Okay, today I'm going to show you how I reload for my Martini Henry rifle. The Martini Henry is a 5.77 450, and how they came to that strange name is that it's a 5.77 caliber shell that was necked down to 45 caliber. So you have 5.77 450, and the the 5.77 was actually came from a Snider shell, and a Snider was a conversion from the Civil War muskets that they cut out a part of the breech and put in this conversion where you could actually use brass cased ammo loaded from the breech of the gun instead of from the muzzle. And this is a Snider brass compared to the Martini Henry, and you can see the similarity at the base there. They're exactly the same. The brass I use is actually shotgun brass that was converted to the Martini Henry size. This is 24 gauge shotgun brass that was necked down and sized by a friend of mine on the British military forums. And the brass uses a large pistol primer. The bullet that I use is actually one that I cast myself from a Lee mold for a 45-70. And it's a hollow-based bullet, which isn't exactly what I need for the Martini. So what I do is I paper patch the bullet. And what I've done is I take a computer paper, and I've made a form that I cut out that wraps around the bullet exactly twice. So there's no overlap at the end. And I get the paper wet and I wrap it around, and then I crush in the bottom and let it dry, and when it dries, it shrinks a little bit and stays on the bullet well. And they did paper patch the original bullets, and what the paper does is it actually grabs the rifling of the barrel and spins the bullet. And this was done to reduce leading from the lead getting inside the bullet into the barrel and reducing accuracy. And how I reload, you'll notice I don't have the large Lee press that's needed for a bullet of this size. You need a special press that can accept the giant Martini Henry dies. And when I got into this, I didn't have the funds to invest in that. So I did some research, and I found that you could use a pistol die from a 480 Ruger. And what that die does is allows me to just resize the neck here, which is really all you need to do. Once you've fired the brass, it fits your chamber perfectly, and you resize the neck so that it'll be tight around a bullet. So what I'll do is I resize the bullet and I resize the neck, and I put a large pistol primer in it before I really begin the reloading process. And then what I use inside the brass here, the steps for reloading, the first thing you put in is 85 grains of black powder, and that was what the original Martini took. Now I use a black powder substitute called Pyrodex. A lot of people complain thinking that it's not good for your barrel, that can gunk it up, but I've shot a fair amount with my Martini, and I've never had that problem. Hot water through the barrel at the end of the day when you're shooting removes it just fine. And black powder is kind of hard to find where I am, and I like to save it for my flintlocks, so I use the Pyrodex here. So what we'll do is we'll put the 85 grains by volume into the case. Now that 85 grains does not fill up this entire case, and you want to, with black powder, you need to make sure you have the powder pressed down against the primer to get proper ignition. So what you need is a filler in here, and what the British used is they took carded wool, which is exactly what this is, and they would push it down inside of the case. And what that would do is take up any of the remaining space down there in the case, about up to there. And then they would take a card. This is a vegetable card, 45 caliber. It's basically like a cork, and they would put that on top just to keep everything nice and compressed down there. And then what they would do next is they would put a grease cookie inside of that. And what a grease cookie was essentially made up of animal fat and beeswax. And what I have here, I took Crisco, which is like a lard, and I melted it with the beeswax, and I made a form here out of a piece of plywood and some strips that are about 1/4 inch tall, and I poured the melted stuff into here. When it cooled and hardened, it's about 1/4 inch deep, is about the size that the grease cookie needs to be. So what I do is I simply just take the case and I'll push it down into the stuff, and there I go, I have a grease cookie. And what the grease cookie did was when you fire the round, it'll smear itself up the barrel. And what that does is that keeps the fouling from the black powder soft. So when you fire the next round through there, it will strip away the, theoretically the fouling along with the grease cookie from the last shot, and it'll put a new coating of grease on there. But one thing you don't want is you don't want the grease getting on the back of the bullet, because that'll certainly affect accuracy. So they would take another card and put it on top, and they would set the bullet on top of that, and then run it through the sizer. That's what I'll do here. I'll run it right up into the sizer die, and there you have it, the Martini Henry round. And just for size comparison, this is a .308 standard military size, NATO, and this is the Martini Henry next to it. The Martini Henry was actually a step up in accuracy when the ballistics, because the 5.77 450, the 5.77 round, essentially they fired a giant slug about like this, a slow fat slug. They realized was not as efficient as a slower, higher speed projectile. So they're on their way down to basically this. The British ended up with a .303, which is very similar to this.